south from the Connecticut town for which Lyme disease was named in the late 1970s, like some unchecked algal bloom. These eight-legged arachnids have turned childhood from a time to explore nature to a time to fear it. My 7-year-old grandson has been warned since he could walk. Don't brush up against the tall grasses at the edge of the trail. Don't venture into the weeds. Tuck socks into pants. Sit still for repellent. Check yourself and remind Mommy to also. Then pray we see the tick and pity the parent who doesn't know to look. Guidance counselors and teachers have told me of children, the most frequently infected, missing months, sometimes years of school because the tick went unseen or the symptoms were misconstrued. But happenstance is not the only reason that cases are missed or treatment delayed, I have learned. Many patients have suffered needlessly in the United States, Canada, England, France, Germany, and many other countries because of how Lyme disease has been framed in American medical journals and treatment guidelines. This is an illness that has been minimized, underestimated, and politicized to the point that doctors fear treating it aggressively with a cheap, common drug, antibiotics. I began to write about Lyme disease as an investigative reporter for a Dutchess County, New York newspaper in 2012. I intended to write 1 or 2 stories about a prevalent local disease, focusing on its origins, growth, and management by health officials. But Lyme disease proved to be a story far beyond the parameters I'd envisioned. Over a period of 4 years, I studied the policies, paper trail, and scientific literature. I tested the postulates of patients and their advocates. Many of their assertions, I concluded, were true. Decades-old testing protocols failed to diagnose many people with the disease. The risk of over-testing and falsely diagnosing people with Lyme disease was exaggerated at the expense of cases missed and symptoms dismissed. Official figures did not reflect the epidemic scope and were soon revised tenfold. Human trials concluded that short-term antibiotics eradicated the bug, while animal and test tube studies showed they didn't. And then there was the politics of Lyme disease. Doctors who prescribed repeated courses of antibiotics, standard in other diseases, faced professional disciplinary charges, huge legal fees, and sometimes suspension or loss of their licenses. Research was discredited, ignored, or relegated to second-tier journals when it challenged prevailing dogma. Scientists who were invested in a benign view of Lyme disease used access to elite journals to uphold the status quo, and little money was available for treatment trials because the medical system purported to have the answers to Lyme disease care. And yet, some 10 to 20% of people infected annually with Lyme disease, estimated at 380,000 Americans in 2015, have symptoms that linger months and sometimes years after treatment. The United States Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, CDC, calls the condition post-treatment Lyme disease syndrome, and it affects multitudes of people as disease-toting ticks move around the world. Lyme disease is rife in most every country in Western Europe. It is in Russia, China, former Soviet satellite states, and, though officially unrecognized, in Australia too. In one small study, half the ticks in 2 parks in New York City harbored the Lyme disease pathogen. In a Chicago park, Ixodes ticks, some laden with the Lyme pathogen, outnumbered every other tick carried by migrating birds in 2010. 5 years earlier, there were none. In a northwestern suburb of Beijing, 1 in 20 residents tested positive in a Chinese study that said, quite remarkably, underdiagnosis of early Lyme disease and physical damage at advanced stage are a huge problem in this area. But infected ticks haven't just moved around. They have added layers of woe. 45% of ticks in the French Ardennes, for example, carry more than one disease. Some have 5. A tick-borne malaria-like illness, babesiosis, unheard of not so long ago.